I almost didn't go. I changed my outfit 3 times, reapplied my lipstick twice, and sat on the edge of my bed for a full 10 minutes, talking myself into standing up. Blind dates are an act of hope, and hope had not been treating me especially well that year. But my friend Dana had arranged it, and Dana had that particular brand of persistence that makes saying no feel more exhausting than just going, so I went. The restaurant was warm and amber-lit, the kind of place that makes everyone look a little better than they are. I arrived 2 minutes early, which I always do, and was shown to the table, which was set for 2. I ordered water. I straightened the fork that didn't need straightening. I watched the door. He walked in at 7 on the dot. His name was Ryan Calloway. Dana had shown me one photo, outdoors, slightly blurry, the kind people use when they want you, to get a general impression without committing to specifics. In person he was tall, dark-haired, broad across the shoulders, the kind of face that takes a moment to fully assemble itself into an opinion. He scanned the restaurant, found me, and walked over. He sat down. He looked at me, and something shifted in his expression, something small and fast that people think they hide but never quite do. A recalibration. A quiet, involuntary adjustment, like a man who has opened a door and found a different room than the one he was expecting. He was polite about it. I'll give him that. He introduced himself, shook my hand, sat down properly, picked up the menu. We exchanged the standard opening lines. How was the drive? Have you been here before? Dana mentioned you work in design. All perfectly civil, all perfectly distant. The kind of conversation that runs on its own tracks and requires no one to actually be present for it. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, looked back at me, looked at the phone again. "I'm so sorry," he said, and his voice was genuinely apologetic, which almost made it worse. There's something I need to handle, a work thing. I'm really sorry about this." He was standing before he finished the sentence. I watched him put his phone in his jacket pocket, straighten his collar, and say, "Sorry," one more time with his eyes already moving toward the exit. Then he walked across the restaurant floor, past the host stand, and out the front door. The waiter appeared at my elbow 30 seconds later with the careful neutrality of someone professionally trained not to acknowledge what had just happened. "Can I get you anything?" he asked. "Just the check," I said. "For the water." I was not going to cry in this restaurant. I had decided that before the waiter finished writing. I was going to pay for my water, put on my coat, and walk out of this place with my chin at a reasonable altitude. And I was going to feel whatever I was going to feel somewhere private, like a person with dignity. I did exactly that. I pushed through the front door into the cold November air and stood on the sidewalk and breathed. The street was busy, a Friday night in the city, people moving in every direction, the particular energy of a night that is someone else's good time. I pulled my coat tighter and started walking toward the parking garage 2 blocks down. That's when I saw him. Ryan Calloway was standing on the sidewalk half a block ahead of me. He had not left. He was not on his phone. He was not hailing a cab or walking purposefully toward anything. He was crouched down on the pavement beside an elderly man who had fallen. The man was maybe 80, slight and white-haired, and he'd gone down on the edge of the curb. Not badly. Not the kind of fall that breaks things, but the kind that takes all the steadiness out of a person and leaves them sitting on cold concrete looking confused about how they got there. People were moving around them on both sides, not stopping. Doing the urban calculation, not my emergency. Someone else will handle it. I'm going to be late. Ryan was not doing that calculation. He was already down there, one hand on the old man's arm, talking to him quietly. I couldn't hear the words from where I was standing, but I could see the body language, calm, careful, unhurried. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't performing concern for anyone watching. He was just completely present with this stranger on the cold pavement, like there was nowhere else in the world he was supposed to be. I stopped walking. I stood there on that sidewalk and watched Ryan help the old man check his hands, his knees, watched him say something that made the old man laugh, actually laugh. A small surprised sound, and then watched him get the man slowly, carefully to his feet. He didn't let go until the man was steady. didn't check his phone, didn't look around to see if anyone had noticed him doing a good thing. The old man pointed down the street. Ryan nodded, and then, and this is the part I keep coming back to, the part that I have turned over in my mind 100 times since, Ryan walked with him. Not to the corner. All the way. He matched his pace to the old man's pace, which was slow, and stayed right beside him. And they walked together down that busy Friday night sidewalk like they'd known each other for years. I followed at a distance. I don't know why. I just wasn't ready to stop watching. At the end of the block, the old man stopped in front of a small Italian place. Different restaurant, not ours, and it became clear that this was where he'd been going. Ryan held the door. The old man went in. Ryan stood in the doorway for a moment, said something to someone inside, and then stepped back out onto the sidewalk. He stood there for a second, hands in his jacket pockets, looking at nothing in particular. Then he started walking back the way he came, back toward me. He saw me when he was about 15 feet away. He stopped. We looked at each other on that sidewalk in the November cold. His expression went through several things very quickly. Recognition, surprise, something that looked like the beginning of shame. "I saw what you did," I said. I didn't plan the words. They just came out. "He'd fallen," Ryan said. Like that explained it completely, like it was the only possible response to the situation. People walked past him. He looked down at the sidewalk for a second, then back up at me. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know." There was a long pause. The city moved around us. A cab honked somewhere. Someone laughed loudly on the other side of the street. "I owe you an apology," he said. "What I did back there, the way I left, that was wrong. I had a reason I told myself was a reason, and it wasn't. I'm sorry." I looked at him. I wasn't ready to make it easy, and he wasn't asking me to. "Why did you leave?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment. The honest kind of quiet, not the stalling kind. "I had a picture in my head," he said, "of what tonight was supposed to look like. And when it didn't match, I panicked and I handled it badly. That's the truth." He met my eyes. "I'm not proud of it." I thought about the restaurant, the small shift in his expression when he'd first seen me, the way he'd left before either of us had said anything real. I thought about the old man on the pavement and the way Ryan had gone down to his level without thinking about it. I thought about how a person can be two things at once, flawed in one moment and genuine in the next, and how maybe that's not a contradiction. Maybe that's just what people are. "There's a coffee place on the next block," I said, "if you want to try this differently." He looked at me for a moment, and the expression on his face then was nothing like the one in the restaurant. It was open and a little uncertain and entirely real. "Yeah," he said, "I'd like that." We stayed in that coffee place for 3 hours. Not because we were trying to make up for the bad start. We weren't performing a recovery. We just kept talking, one thing leading to the next. The way conversations go when something underneath them is actually working. He told me about growing up in Ohio, about the brother he'd lost 4 years ago, to an accident that still lived in him, like a splinter he'd learned to move around. I told him about my mother's illness last winter and the 6 months I'd spent driving back and forth across the state, trying to be enough for everyone and running out of myself. Somewhere around March, we didn't perform strength for each other. We didn't perform anything. At some point, I don't know when exactly, the thing that had started as an attempt to salvage a wreck became something I didn't have a word for yet. Something that required its own word, one I'd have to find later. He walked me to my car. At the entrance to the parking garage, he stopped and turned to face me and said, "I want to be honest with you about something." "Okay," I said. I almost kept walking tonight. When I saw him on the ground, he meant the old man. I almost did what everyone else did. I thought about it for a second. And then I thought about my brother and the way people didn't stop for him and I couldn't. He looked at me steadily. "I'm not telling you that to make myself sound good. I'm telling you because I don't want to be the person who keeps walking. And tonight I almost was that person twice." I understood what he meant. He meant the restaurant. He meant me. "But you didn't," I said. "No," he said. "I didn't." I drove home that night through the empty late streets, and I thought about a lot of things. About judgment and snap. decisions and the small moments where character either holds or it doesn't. About how I had almost gone back to my apartment after the water and cried quietly, and written the whole night off as another disappointment to add to the list. About how the best thing that happened to me that night started with the worst thing. That was 14 months ago. Last Sunday morning, Ryan made breakfast while I sat at the kitchen counter and read the paper, and at some point I looked up and watched him without him knowing I was watching, the particular pleasure of observing a person in their unguarded moments. He was making eggs with the focus he gives to everything, the same focus he'd given to a stranger on a cold sidewalk on a Friday night, when no one was watching and there was nothing to gain. That's the thing I keep learning about him. The person he is when it counts is the same person he is when it doesn't count. There's no gap between the two. That consistency, I've come to understand, is the rarest thing there is. He looked up and caught me watching. "What?" he said. "Nothing," I said. He smiled and went back to the eggs. Outside the kitchen window, the November light came in the same way it had that first night. That particular quality of late autumn light. The color of something almost over, something about to change. I thought about the version of me that almost didn't go. That almost stayed on the edge of the bed and said no to Dana and let hope keep its quiet distance for one more night. I thought about the version of him that almost kept walking. Neither of us did. And here, in this kitchen, in this light, in this life, we have been slowly and carefully building out of the unlikely material of a 4-minute disaster is where not walking away brought us. Some stories don't start clean. Some stories start with a door and someone walking out of it. But what I know now, what I would tell anyone who's sitting on the edge of the bed, talking themselves out of hope, is this: the story isn't over when someone walks out. Sometimes it's only just beginning. Sometimes you have to follow them into the cold to find out who they really are. And sometimes, if you're paying attention, what you find out there on the sidewalk changes everything. If you stayed until the very end of this story, then you already felt it. That moment on the sidewalk, that turn, that choice to not keep walking. Some stories find you at exactly the right time. And if this one found you tonight, please don't let it go quietly. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to believe that people are still capable of surprising you, and subscribe to this channel. Every single week, we bring you stories exactly like this one, human, honest and real in the ways that matter most. We'll see you in the next one.